Hello, this is the Commercial Landscaper Podcast with Robert Clinkenbeard. This show will transform your leadership by developing all areas of your life, business, family, personal and health. Only by fine-tuning yourself will you truly operate at a highly functioning leader. Super excited today to announce that we're just surpassed the 100th edition of the Commercial Landscaper Show. And we're going to see better things from this year. We're going to be introducing some education, courses in leadership and sales that you could apply and join and try to improve yourself. So hopefully you can join us in some of these courses and reach out if you want to hear some new guests. This is all about bettering you, bettering your business and make you function at a super high level. Thanks again, everyone. Cheers. Hi, this is Robert Clinkenbeard with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I'm really excited today to be joined by Bruce Wilson. Bruce Wilson is the founder of the Bruce Wilson Company consulting company. But Bruce, love to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you.
So Bruce, just for our audience, we have probably, this is going to go out to maybe about 5,000 or 6,000 listeners all around the world. We have listeners in Australia, in Europe, and Asia. But for those listeners that don't really know you, tell people a little bit about your vast industry experience.
Well, I've been in the industry now for over 50 years. Started as a kid mowing grass,
Okay.
which is the way a lot of people get started. I went to college, got a degree in partially landscape architecture, but floriculture and business, and then worked in the tree care business for a few years. And in 1971, I moved out to the West Coast and started working for what became the maintenance division of Valley Crest Landscape, which is now part of Brightview. I worked there and worked myself up and became president of it in 1979. And at that time, we were doing about 7.8 million, and I grew it to 140 million and semi-retired in 2000. And at that time, I started Wilson Euler Consulting, which is now called Bruce Wilson Consulting, Bruce Wilson Company. And couple of the contractors that I was consulting with approached me about forming a peer group. And at that time, there were no peer groups, or were very few peer groups in the green industry. So we formed a peer group called Next Level. And that peer group just had its final meeting last November, I think.
Yep.
And when 3 more of the members decided to sell to private equity. And over the course of that peer group, there were altogether maybe 12, 15 companies. It started with 6, but then one by one, they started to sell and to private equity. And it was almost completely turned over by 2017 or 18, I can't remember exactly, but that's the year that Gary Mallory and sold Heads Up, and they were the original founding company, along with Cocal. So it's been fun. We now have 10 peer groups, and that's most of what I do. And in 2011, I started another maintenance company with George Gonzalez. He was a client of mine who had a very large construction company, landscape construction company in Palm Desert. And during the Great Recession, there just was no work. And he lasted a few years into the recession and then gave up. And I had convinced him to start maintenance about 3 years prior to that. So he was up a little over $1 million in maintenance. And he contacted me and asked if I wanted to partner with him and build a company to do maintenance. So I did, and it was called Conserve Land Care. And we built it up to 24 million in 8 years and sold it to the Sperber companies. And I think I'm through being in the contracting business and just consulting and trying to take some time off.
No, that's awesome. I mean, Bruce, first of all, thank you for your service to the industry. I know you got an amazing award last year with EDLP. To tell us about that.
Well, it's a Lifetime Achievement Award for leadership, and I was very surprised by it. I knew they had that award because I saw Ron Kujawa get it, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. Right. And thought, well, if I ever won an award, that would be a great one to win. And they do it, they surprise you with it. They don't tell you you're getting it. And I almost didn't go to the meeting to get it because I don't like going to those things. But I went because one of our other clients was getting honored and I felt I should go. Right. And it was great. My family was there. Very rewarding and to be appreciated like that.
Yeah, I know your family surprised you there. I was obviously there watching that, and it was tremendous to see everybody's appreciation of everything you've done over the years, and your obviously family were super excited to be there and be part of that. So that's tremendous.
Yeah.
And I think, I obviously know a little bit more detail about you in terms of I was part of that next level group. It's I will say a high functioning group. The event you spoke about last year in St. Louis, hosted by Focal Point, was a great event. It was one of those drop the mic events where we had Vern Harnish, we had John DeJulius, a bunch of other speakers. We had some great workshops. I don't know, 150 plus people. So it was almost like, those members that went on to sell their company went out with a bang almost through that event. So it was just nice to see that happening. So yeah, I mean, you obviously have such a great knowledge and have been part of different companies. I mean, to grow a company in 8 years to 24 million and have a nice exit there. I mean, your time is now spent consulting. You've obviously been through lots, probably several downturns over the years. How are you seeing that in terms of the way companies are thinking going into these headwinds? You've got, a lot of, financial challenges coming up, a lot of uncertainty going up, a lot of companies that have maybe, been started in the last, 8, 10, 12 years have never experienced this before. So tell them your wisdom.
Well, most of our clients have experienced the Great Recession. And from what I can see of the way they're approaching the uncertainty now, they're definitely cautious. And this one's a little bit baffling because some of the indicators are that we're actually in a recession. But in terms of the business climate, it seems like the only things really affecting the companies negatively are the inflationary pricing that's happening in a lot of different sectors, especially fuel earlier this year. That's moderated a little bit now. And I think now that interest rates are going up, people are getting a little more cautious about borrowing money. But their amount of business they have seems to still be strong. They've got good backlogs going into next year. There's a little bit of tightening going on spending with enhancements. Some of the people are saying, customers are postponing a little bit and waiting to see what their budgets are for next year before they commit to things. And the price increases that came very easy last year, very bigger increases than I've seen in my whole time in the industry, were granted to contractors last year. This year, I think they're starting to see some resistance to large increases. And In fact, I just was with a contractor who was told that if you go more than 5%, we're going out to bid.
Right.
And, that contractor has determined that they need on most of their contracts close to 10%. So, with the actual costs, where they figured out what their actual costs are, which I think is probably the first thing I would recommend, that before you start throwing percentages at customers, you figure out what your costs really have gone up. You've had material price increases, you've certainly had labor price increases. Well, and fuel increases, and equipment cost increases, those kind of things. Well, you can quantify that and see how much of that, how much that really truly affects your price, and be able to answer those questions.
Right.
Just throwing a percentage at them, I don't think is very effective, because they think you just pull a number out of the air. That
actually brings up a good question. I mean, when you were back with environmental care, Valley Crest, just I would imagine that the availability of data now through systems like Aspire, like Boss, all these other systems out there are just making that data for people to analyze the costs is probably a lot more easier to come by now.
And probably easier for contractors that didn't have that. Fortunately, Valley Crest did have that.
Right.
We had a system with JD Edwards for the last 10 or so years that I was there. Right. That was probably just as powerful as what we have today with Aspire. And also we had a good CFO who was very supportive in helping us build our case financially so that it made sense.
Right.
And still didn't guarantee we were going to get an increase, but at least we built a compelling story and were able to, if not get the increase, adjust service levels so that we could get the margin we were looking for by eliminating some services for the time being until things caught up.
Is that one of the tactics that you advise to some of your clients, that if they haven't done a good job of raising their prices over the last few years, and suddenly they realize they have to catch up, and they're trying to get a 10-15+% increase, is that one of the tactics to look at? Is just let's obviously maintain that client, because you've spent a long time trying to get that client in the door, and you want to be with them when they come out of this recession, but just looking at adjusting the services that are being offered to the client.
Yeah, that's probably the first thing you should do. I think just giving in on the price is wrong, because I think it sends a message that you were asking for too much to start with. Right. That if you're willing to go from 8% down to 3%, if that's what they want, right, then you don't want them to feel like you're making too much money. But it's easy to carve out services that once you carve them out, if they're used to getting a high level of service from you, and say you cut the fertilizations from 6 to 3, and that can save them some money. Once the lawn starts to lose its color, they want you to do the fertilizing anyway, so they'll pay you as an extra. Right. And it's the way their budgets work for most companies is they're focused on the recurring contract price. And once they get that put to bed, they have other money in their budget. And if you take things out that that they're going to want back in, you're going to get it anyway.
Right.
So it's a good tactic. But I think another simultaneous tactic is, I think I've been talking to people the last few months about operational proficiency and operational excellence. I think the best way to be in a good position to negotiate with your contract is for your work to be really good, and your service to be very consistent, and you're meeting your commitments every day, and you're very low. You're easy to do business with. They don't have to hound you to do stuff. So focusing on tightening up your operation, I think, is essential to put yourself in the right position to be in a good negotiating position when it comes time to negotiate price. They'll want to negotiate with you, right? Because they appreciate what you do for them, and I think it's fairly easy to do if you just think back on this year, put a committee together, and do what we call a lessons learned review. Like, how did spring go? Spring is usually the most difficult part for most companies because everything seems to pile up and hit you all at once in a very short period of time, including you're bringing in, like in the winter climate, you're bringing back a new workforce or partially new. So you need to go through each season and say what went right, what went wrong, and how can we do better next year. And for most companies, they do okay during the summer and the fall. The tough time is the spring, and if there's going to be some so-called coffee stains on your service tray, they're going to come from the spring. So getting off to a good start with a good plan. And I think the things that cause you to run a lot of overtime and stuff in the spring is when your different things like spring cleanups and mulching and flower planting and starting the mowing all hit at once. You've got to plan out, like, how long will spring cleanups take, and start early enough to finish before you're going to start mulching if you mulch next, and then before you start mowing, and so on, so those things don't collapse on each other. And then you just have to throw labor at it.
Yeah. If you sort of plan out your labor and your labor needs a little bit ahead of time, then it puts you in a better position. One of the challenges I've come across when I go into different companies is, the usual excuse about, well, we can't find labor, we can't find good quality labor. One of the things I push back on a little bit is, have you looked at your internal employees? Are there any rock stars in there that are hidden, if you've never really given them an opportunity to develop within your company? And there's some pushback again. Well, they don't speak good English. And I said, well, have you ever thought about giving them Spanish lessons or some type of development, because you could have some great people. And I think you shared with me, at least on one occasion, Bruce, that with your company, that that was one of the things you were took pride in developing employees internally.
Yeah, that's another thing I've been pushing real hard this year with our clients that I've worked with. I think we need to promote careers in this industry, and we need to hire for careers, not just fill positions. And I think that the best recruiters we have are our own people. And if we reach out to our people and ask them to bring friends, they don't have to have any experience, but if they're friends and you think they're good people, and most of our people that are good people hang around with other good people, right? So we're very effective at Conserve, at growing very fast, and hardly ever having to, we didn't use H2B because in the desert we're full-time all year long anyway. It's not a seasonal business. So it's not really designed, the H2B program is not designed for companies like ours. But we almost always had people walking in and applying for work. Um, and most of them were referred by somebody in the company. They would bring them in, and it was they were mostly good people. We'd have a few screw ups, but for the most part, we got good people. And I convinced our team, look, hire the people that have potential to do more than what you're hiring them for. And then we have to make training available to them so that they can, if they're just coming in as a green person in the industry, as a laborer or a gardener, and with no gardening skills, we've got to train them on that and let them be aware that the way they can make more money is by gaining more skills and moving up in the company. And by moving up, they can move up to be an irrigation tech, they can move up to be a spray tech, a foreman, a crew leader, tree climber, whatever kind of other positions you have, and show them a career ladder where they can go and make truly more money. They don't have to leave and go work for another landscaper for 25 cents an hour more. You're just chasing quarters, where if you get some training and learn, then you can move up dollars and multiple dollars and get more of a year-round full-time job with a career. So I think at the same time, it behooves us all to promote the industry as a good career, to get people to realize what kind of potential there is. And as far as the hidden gems that are in your company, I think it behooves you as owners or senior leaders to get out in the field and watch people work and see for yourself, get to know some of the people. The guy that's now branch manager of our company was split in half by Sperber into two branches. And both of the branch managers came from people working their way up in our company. And one of them, Israel Ruiz, he was working for us. He was working for another contractor on a city job that we both had. Mariposa Landscape had half and we had half. And he worked for Mariposa, and they'd have meetings with both companies once a month, and they'd kind of go over our performance. And we always got, raving reviews, and Mariposa didn't. And Israel was there to see that. And the reason they weren't getting it is he wasn't getting the support from the company, the help he needed when he needed it, and the equipment he needed when he needed it. So he asked Juan, our account manager there, if there were any openings in Conserve, and if there were, he'd like to come to work for us. And so we hired him, and he was on a job, Eisenhower Medical Center. And I got pulled into a session with the facility engineer there that was upset with us because the CEO of the hospital was upset with us not picking up papers all the time. And so we had a meeting with him, and he kind of put us on notice. And so I met with Israel and the account manager afterwards, and we talked about, we had to get this figured out. And about a month later, Randy, the account manager, went in to see the facility manager and see how things were going. And he said to Randy, he says, well, those maps you gave us were a home run. The CEO now knows where you are every day and realizes that, there are like 30 or 40 buildings on this complex, and you're not at them all every day. And so it solved the problem. And Randy didn't know what he was talking about, but Israel had made a spreadsheet up and a map to show where everything was. And we didn't know that Israel knew how to make spreadsheets or maps or things. And I only worked there 2 days a month. I mean, every 2 days every other week at first. And so I shared a computer that was they were account managers had computers. And I sat at one that Israel used when I was there during the day. And I'm sitting there looking at papers on his desk, and there's this big long equation written out. And I'm not an engineer, so I couldn't read the equation, but I knew it was an equation. And so Israel at that time was kind of like a little puppy dog. You needed to come in and get petted all the time. How am I doing, boss? You know. So he was in for his recognition session, and I said, "Hey, Israel, what's this equation? What's that for?" And he says, "Oh, I showed the engineer that the pump. Remember, they said the pump was always clogged up with snails and stuff." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's not snails." He says, "The pump's too small." And so this equation showed him that calculation and why it was too small. And he said, "Replace it." And I said, "Oh." I said, "So how did you know to do that?" And I said, "Did the site one or one of the irrigation houses do this for you?" And he said, No, I know how to do it. I have a degree in civil engineering and from Mexico." And I said, "No kidding." And, then we just started to give Israel responsibilities, and he was running a entire operation. We had 430 or so employees when we sold, and he ran all 430 employees. He was scheduled them all and did everything. He's a whiz on spreadsheets, a whiz on planning, just an amazing guy. And that guy, if we didn't accidentally figure out what he was all about, he might have worked for us for a while, then left and gone to work for somebody else, and maybe somebody else would have discovered him. But I mean, there's people out there. We were very successful at environmental care over my 20 years of being president at developing people. And, all 28 of our branch managers were internally grown. We didn't ever go out to hire a branch manager, and only hired a few senior managers from other companies. But, and it was hard to integrate them because we were such a strong promote from within culture. Right. If we went out, we had pushback on it. And
no, that's great. I mean, I think the big messages I'm taking away from that is, obviously look at creating a career path for your employees within the company. Look for those hidden gems within the company, go out and observe them in the field or working around, just so that you can find them. Because I think a lot of time crew leaders are obviously, they try to hide some good team members because they obviously want to keep them under wraps.
Yeah.
But if you create that career path, you look for those hidden gems and then develop them, then yeah, you're right, they could easily become supervisors, branch managers in the future.
Yeah, I think if you let people know, and we did in environmental care, that we're growing and we're going to need more account managers every year, more foremen every year, more supervisors every year. And if you want to be considered for one of those positions, you have to train your replacement. Because if you don't have a replacement, we're going to be hesitant to pull you out and promote you, because it just makes another hole. So once everybody figures out how that works, they start training their replacement so that they can. And the other thing we had to talk to them about is, the people that are going to move the fastest up the company, for those of you that want to get ahead, you got to be willing to move. Because, in our more established branches, they had a lot of senior managers that were pretty rooted in the community with their families and stuff, and they weren't going anywhere. And so it kind of blocks the promotion path. And so if you want to get out of that and get into some place where you can move, it's going to be in our newer branches, where we go into new markets and we need to build a team. And we want to build a team of people that are already raised in our culture and know how we operate. So, once you start communicating that with the employees, then they start to get it. And, we hired as many college graduates every year as we could. We wanted one or two in each branch. Those are the people that were the most promotable because they were educated, they were already interested in the industry, and they had a good horticultural background to build from. And some had experience working for other companies while they were going to college.
Right.
So they had experience. And those are the people that become your leaders the fastest. Finding Israel's are, like once in a moon. But, the other people the other guy that became a branch manager for us came through the account manager track. And he started as a part-time guy in our estimating department that did takeoffs on plans. And he left to start a wedding photography business. And so he was a wedding photographer, and they wanted to have a family, he and his wife, and he needed more steady income. So when we were looking for a new account manager trainee person, Kelly, our office manager, said, well, what about Joe, who worked for us as a part-time estimator? He and his wife are wanting to have a baby, and his wedding photography business isn't consistent enough income. And he might be interested. So we reached out to him and interviewed him. And after we interviewed him, we realized, if you can keep a bride and the bride's mother happy on wedding day, you can do anything.
I'm not going to comment on that.
There's just a lot of detail that they want, and you got to remember it all and execute it all. And he was a superstar account manager very quickly, and now he's the other branch manager.
That's awesome.
So,
well, Bruce, I know we've just finished up with time here. I could easily speak to you for another half hour, an hour or so. So we'll definitely get you back on the podcast again. If people want to reach out to you and just get your knowledge and pick your brains a little bit, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably email.
Okay.
If you just email me and say you'd like to have a call or a conversation, then we'll schedule a call. And it's hit or miss to try and get me on the phone. I have a cell phone that doesn't work at my house.
That's not good.
And there's just no coverage with any cell phone company in this area. That's good. So I have an office phone, and we can hook up on the office phone. I can give them the phone number.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that your email's in the show notes. But Bruce, really appreciate your knowledge, your wisdom, your service to the industry, and really appreciate your time today, Bruce.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everybody.
That was the Commercial Landscaper podcast hosted by Robert Clinkenbeard, and I'm the author of the Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. If you want to find out more about the show, you're welcome to go to thecommerciallandscaper.com, or if you want to learn more about courses, education, buying some books, even if you want to just drop a note and suggest a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Again, this is Robert Clinkenbeard, the Commercial Landscaper podcast. Cheers, everyone.